Thank you so much, Michelle. As I said, welcome to today's debate where we will dive into the question, is history really calling for enlargement of the EU? My name is Fatma Sharoua. I am a project manager at DEO, and I will try to, the best of my abilities, moderate this debate. The online debate is a part of an Erasmus Plus project between the three organizations, Democracy in Europe organizations DEO from Denmark, Sol from Croatia, and Europahaus Rügewelde from Belgium. Now, enlargement of the European Union has of lately been the topic of everyone's agenda, minds, and negotiations. And in September 2023, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, made it a focus point in her yearly State of the Union speech, stating that history is now calling us to work on completing our union. With Ukraine and Moldova receiving candidate status in 2002, as well as Georgia in 2003, much already indicates that the direction is clear and the EU wants to move fast. But what is the great vision behind these developments against enlargement, and what will be the consequences? Does a comprehensive enlargement necessarily point toward a stronger union, or could it lead to the opposite? To enlighten us and engage in the debate about EU's enlargement plan, we will today be joined by three expert accounts. Bozo Kovacevic is a Croatian politician and diplomat. He was one of the founders of the Croatian Social Liberal Party in 1989 and the Liberal Party in 1998. He has served as the Minister of Environmental Protection and Physical Planning. Rege Lauwersen is a candidate for the European Parliament election in 2024. So she is running, as we speak, for the Danish political party Socialistisk Folkeparti Green Left. Voda Beke is a politician for the Belgian party, Christian Democratic Party, CDNV, and is a candidate for the European Parliament election 2024 also. He has served as the Flemish Minister for Welfare, Public Health, Family, and Poverty Reduction. Thank you all for coming, and safe to say we are in very good hands. And the format will be as following. The invited politicians will each give a short presentation. They will start out, followed by questions from you participants. Their initial presentations will all in all take 30 minutes, but feel free to ask questions. As Michelle stated, you can find her in the chat and write her any upcoming questions. Bozo will start. This meeting is being recorded. Bozo will start, Rege will follow, and Voda will complete the first leg of the debate. Go ahead, Bozo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me, for giving me a chance to share my opinions with such interesting group of people. I have to tell you on the beginning that I will express certain radical theses, not because I'm not pro-European oriented, but because I want my criticism to be heard, and I would like that certain reforms of EU would be implemented. So let's start with one of radical theses. EU is not credible actor in international relations. EU does not fulfill its promises. There are two visible examples, North Macedonia and Albania. Those countries fulfilled all requirements made in front of them by EU and were expected negotiations to begin. It didn't happen. It didn't happen not because of North Macedonia or Albania failures, but because EU was not ready to start negotiations. So it was only up to EU to make decision and to proceed with those negotiations. EU takes over responsibility for solving problems it cannot solve alone by its own means. When I say this, I have in mind Ukraine and Moldova. Expectations on Ukrainian and Moldovan side is that EU will help them to solve their main problems, and their main problems are related to territorial integrity. If we judge on basis of previous experiences, if we bear in mind, for instance, dissolution of Yugoslavia experience, when EU observers have been present on the ground, then we can conclude that EU is not relevant player in that respect. The war in Yugoslavia was stopped when United States was actively involved in trying to find solutions. So if Ukrainian people and Moldovan people do expect that candidacy for European Union membership will somehow help them to solve their main problem, then they are deeply mistaken, in my opinion. Regarding Bosnia and Herzegovina, we all expect that negotiations with Bosnia will start soon. But I'm really afraid that that if international community will try to solve internal Bosnian political problems, and if that international community does not entail United States too, then if that process of solving internal Bosnian problems is dependent only of EU engagement, then I'm afraid that possible outcome, which mean Bosnian membership in European Union, will not be complete. I'm afraid that part of Bosnia can become a EU member, and the rest of Bosnia, I bear in mind Republika Srpska, will be outside the EU. So I'm afraid of possible Cyprus kind of solution for Bosnian membership in European Union if solving Bosnian problems is dependent only of EU engagement there. EU is not ready to defend its diplomatic achievements. There are two examples. There are more, but I will mention two examples. The first one is negotiations between former then Ukrainian President Yanukovych and opposition leader Klitschko. 3 European foreign ministers were guarantors of that agreement, that it will be implemented. So what happened? Protesters on Maidan Square, under the influence of United States, rejected that agreement, and EU didn't try to persuade them that it's good agreement, and EU remained silent toward the United States. So, in my opinion, it was serious diplomatic failure. It was a moment when EU diplomacy could influence decisively on European security issues and European politics generally, but EU failed to do that. And the next step of next example of European diplomatic failures is Minsk II agreement. all of us remember that then Ukrainian President Poroshenko asked then German Chancellor to persuade President Putin to start negotiations. French President Hollande and then British Prime Minister were present there too. So all of them participated in those negotiations and certain result was achieved. Minsk II agreement. That agreement was transformed in United Security Resolutions 2202. And what happened? The Ukrainian leadership, although they signed that agreement, refused to implement that agreement. They got United States support in their decision not to implement that agreement, and European diplomacy remained silent again. So I think that those two examples present how European diplomacy lost any credibility in global international relations. And it's catastrophic precisely because it's related to European security directly. So European Union was not able to stand for its security, political and economic interests. And that's why I'm not too much optimistic regarding further enlargement policies of EU. Current constitutional order, as far as I agree, which means Lisbon agreements, does not enable European Union to profile itself as a credible subject of international relations. And it's the Lisbon agreements is preventing successful implementation of current EU enlargement policies, because disagreements among member states can prevent any further step regarding to enlargement. So I think that EU reform of Lisbon agreements, or better to say, necessity to have European constitution. That's what must happen if we want any European policy, which includes enlargement policies and European foreign and security policies to be implemented successfully. Those reforms are necessary precondition for successful articulation and successful implementation of any kind of European policies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bozo, for that account. Next in line is Rege. You can go ahead and unmute your mic, please.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, enlargement of the EU. I see it more as a necessity and a challenge and a huge possibility, because the security agenda has changed since especially Russia's attack on Ukraine. We can't let our European neighbors alone. The European countries who wish to be part of the European Union should have the chance, but it of course requires huge responsibilities from them and the EU system. It requires changes from all sides. So I see challenges with the enlargement of many more countries. I just don't see it any differently. First and foremost, the new countries, of course, needs to live up to the Copenhagen criteria. But we also need inside the EU to make sure that it has consequences when member states' democracies disrupt. If we want countries to live up to the rule of law criteria, democracy, media freedom, we need to live up to them ourselves. So we have a challenge there to make sure that the already member states live up to the EU values and laws. We should also and have the possibility to make a stronger, more united union with a strong focus, of course, as a Green party in a Green group. We have to focus on the green transition and social justice. The European citizens, whether from Denmark, Croatia, Belgium, or in the future, Ukraine or Moldova, people should earn a decent salary, afford to heat their home, and feel safe. The European Union has repeatedly shown its strength. Together we can welcome new countries. And the geopolitical reality sometimes means that we have to act. The COVID pandemic made it quite clear that we are stronger together, but it also showed that we have a tendency in the European countries to forget that there's a world outside of our borders. So the enlargement is not only about the security of the candidate countries, it's about our collective security and stability. I think we think it is necessary to have a gradual inclusion because we cannot compromise on the Copenhagen criteria, but the enlargement has to be done quite quickly. And big changes take time, and therefore it also needs to be done gradually, but that does not mean that there will be permanent second-grade membership. We need to have a strong union, and we need to have equality among the member states. And saying that, it's also quite important to underline that we should, as Boso said, not forget the West Balkan states. We should be careful not to promise too much, and we should be careful to look inside ourselves to see if we are actually fulfilling our promises. To sum up, I have to perhaps I think from a green perspective, it's quite important to say that what I really see as a huge threat to humanity, that is the climate change, the climate crisis. And this enlargement process can be a game changer. It seems necessary for the enlargement of, for instance, huge agricultural countries like Ukraine to transform the agricultural policy. And that can be a chance for the green transition. So we make green incentives and force a green transition onto the agricultural land, inside and outside. It's simply necessary. But of course, the second threat to our security is authoritarian states, and that is, of course, especially Russia. The Eastern states have warned us for a long time, and we didn't listen. We listen now. But I also have to say that inequality is a threat to stability and to our security. What I would actually call injustice is inequalities between, and that's between European countries, it's between West and North, North and South, but it's also inequalities between the European continent and, for instance, the global South. So we have a lot to discuss, and also happy to come back to some of what Boso said. That was really interesting. So happy to take the debate, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Rikke, for that nuance in the debate and your account. Lastly, but not least, we have Ruda Bække, who will take the floor. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you for the invitation. For me, the discussion is no expansion or no widening without deepening the union. This is how it always has been in Europe, and this is how it should be also now. In December last year, you know that the European Council decided to start the enlargement talks with Ukraine and Moldova. And I think that creating false expectations to rapid accession will only lead to disappointment. The European Union must first prepare thoroughly for enlargement by delving into its competences. Except for Prime Minister Cameron's profound miscalculation on the United Kingdom's subsequent exit, The European Union only expanded over the past 65 years. More and more states want to join the world's biggest trading power, and that's a good thing. Turkey has been knocking on Europe's door since 1959. Several Balkan countries, Georgia, Moldova, Ukraine, are knocking on the door right now. Meanwhile, the European Commission has indicated it's ready to effectively start negotiations with the latter two as well. Of course, this is not the first time Europe has faced a major enlargement. After Denmark, Ireland, the UK, Greece, Portugal, Spain, and the unified Germany, next major enlargement presented itself in the 90s. Before each enlargement, however, the member states made sure to deepen their powers through new treaties. The Maastricht Treaty, for example, in 1992, established the cohesion funds for the poorest member states, laid down foundations for a common foreign and security policy, as well as common justice and home affairs policy, and set the criteria for the Eurozone. A few years later, Sweden, Finland, Austria were able to join, and Norway, as we know, dropped out after a referendum. Shortly afterwards, another 10 countries applied to become member, good for 75 million new European residents. Therefore, before enlarging, negotiations were launched to deepen the function of the Union. Again, in the Copenhagen criteria, the Union laid down conditions for candidate member states, be a democracy, respecting human rights, having a free market economy, implement the acquis communautaire, the entirety of the European laws. And last but not least, the Union itself must be ready for the enlargement. At the Nice summit in 2000, before the major enlargement, the Commission was reduced in size, only one commissioner per member state. The number of decisions taken by unanimity was reduced. Brussels became the permanent headquarters of European summits, and each member state was allocated in numbers of points that could be used in votes. It took until 2004 for the 10 countries to join the Union. 3 years later, also Bulgaria and Romania would also join. However, the work was not yet finished. The Laken Convention set an ambitious agenda that allowed the Union to decide more matters with a simple majority, increased the role of the European Parliament, and reduced the size of the Commission. A permanent Commission President elected by the European Parliament, a Charter of Fundamental Rights, a permanent President of the European Council, a European Ministry of Foreign Affairs with a High Representative for the Union abroad were all introduced. This would eventually lead to the Lisbon Treaty in 2007. Today, we face another major enlargement. A dozen countries are eager to join, accounting for more than 65 million new EU citizens. With Ukraine and Moldova, negotiations would be launched. In doing so, these countries will have to meet the Copenhagen criteria. This criteria also states that the Union itself must be ready for enlargement. It's not today. After all, the European Union's absorption capacity is not unlimited. An enlargement of the European Union must not weaken its clout. The European project is more ambitious than merely melting into a larger possible free trade area. This is precisely why the British left the Union. As with the Maastricht criteria in 1991 or the Lisbon Treaty in 2007, we again need a thorough internal exercise before admitting new countries. After all, a European Commission with 37 commissioners becomes completely unworkable. The European Parliament will need more clout. The decisions should be taken by majority rather than unanimity. Europe must first have determined its policy in areas such as asylum and migration, because with more countries involved, this will not become easier. Quite the contrary. Also, an enlargement will have to be prepared first with the current European competences. Ukraine's agricultural production, for example, is larger than the German and the French combined. The country is not called the granary of Europe for no reasons. Without reform and preparation, the impact on our farmers will be huge. I think that an honest parler vrai with the candidate countries is necessary, and also the most respectful towards them. Giving the impression that the membership is possible in a short notice without our internal homework would be quite the opposite of treating new member states with respect. The timing set by the European Council President Charles Michel in 2030 is not realistic. Creating false expectations will only lead to disillusionment and not accelerate any accession. Because of the current geopolitical context, the enthusiasm for admitting new countries to the European Union is very high. This is understandable, but the paradox is that in this new geopolitical context, Europe will only be able to play a strong role if not only broadens, but also deepens. This is how it always has been. This is also how it should be now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bodo, for that historical account of where we have been to know where we are going. This is the first leg of the debate concluded with the accounts from our politicians. Now we open the floor for questions. I already have a list sent over by Michelle. To those of you who just joined us, I can tell you that if you have questions, you need to find Michelle Petuliensen in the instant chat and then send her a request for questions. Now, you are three experts with us today, so maybe we should try to work with the reaction. Raise your hand. I would love to give you all the time to answer each question. And if you have any comments, then please raise your hands and I'll try to get to either Regge, Bozo, or Voda. And with that said, Michelle, go ahead and give us the first question.
Yes, the first question is from Kai Mortensen. He writes, I have a debate club where we consider enlargement issues regarding the EU. Our fundamental thesis is, what do they want with us? What would we like with them? Or what do we want from them? Can the speakers give a view on what do we want with the new candidates?
Thank you so much, Michelle. Bozo, will you lead the way? Can you maybe try to give us an insight as to what are some of the pros for an enlargement of the EU? What can these countries contribute to when letting them in the European Union? I need you to unmute your mic, sir.
Well, I think that it's visible that population of those countries, candidate countries, are very positively oriented toward the EU. Although we must bear in mind that sometimes their political representatives present them EU as a way to get more money from European budget than to pay in the budget. So that's how local politics function. But people are generally oriented toward EU, and regarding Balkan countries, EU missed opportunity to realize real impact on those societies. For years, the European Union was ignoring those countries, or didn't care too much about their ambitions. So what EU can expect from those countries? From the governments to fulfill all necessary preconditions, and from citizens, I think that European Union can expect loyal European citizens. What those countries can expect from European Union? They already realized that their expectations were too high. That European Union doesn't care too much for its own promises. So I think that that in present situation, EU is a side which must correct itself.
Thank you very much, Bozo. Rege or Hoda, would you like to? Rege, go ahead.
Yeah, just shortly, I think I need to at least say that I think the EU has been a beneficial for most member states. It's a huge market, a strong cooperation, and also because it's much more, as Wouter said, it's not just a trade union. There are consumer protection, green standards, like it's really environmentally dealing with the climate crisis. It's in the EU we have hope. I don't see much hope as a Dane, I have to say, from a green perspective, not that much hope for our own government, but I really see hope in the EU system, like setting strong, ambitious targets has really shown its purpose. And therefore, both the countries wanting to be a member of the European Parliament and the of the EU, and the EU as such will gain from being broader. We, of course, there are many issues and we need to tackle them, but it's a necessity for investing in democracy, investing in security, making sure that people are safe, also not just from the threat from Russia or China, but also from the climate crisis, the biodiversity crisis. And if I should just shortly touch upon what I think both Bozo and Wouter said, we should be a bit careful about saying that EU security is also we are still benefiting from a strong United States, I have to say. We have to cooperate. So just shortly to say, we should be much stronger ourselves, but we are still in liaison with the United States.
Thank you, Rege. Michelle, do you want to take us through to the next question?
Yes, next in line is Philip Kurzhals. He has a question for Bozo. So Philip, if you want to unmute yourself and ask the
Go
question.
ahead, Philip, and unmute your mic. The word is yours.
Yes, thank you. Hello, I am Philip, and I am a student at European Studies in Denmark. I have written up some lines and questions, so to say, and first, I believe, however, I would like to thank you all for interesting perspectives for debate on enlargement. And I, to Rege, do agree that big changes take time. However, to emphasize my comment, so to say, is that climate change cannot be solved. This is a personal perspective without geopolitical cooperation. And I would then, to ask Bozo from here, like to hear if EU with enlargement would, in theory, be a possibility of getting rid of the US, or at least would it be strengthening NATO, looking at the Russian, Ukrainian, and Russian Western Europe perspective?
Thank you very much, Philip, for your question. Bozo, this was directed for you. Again, Voda, you are, of course, welcome to chime in as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. I don't think that the purpose of strengthening of European identity and European profile as autonomous international relations subject means getting rid of United States. No, means to try to get be on equal level, to try to become able to defend ourselves by our means. It doesn't mean without cooperation inside NATO and without cooperation with the United States. But in current global situation, we have let's say three poles of influence inside that multipolar world. It's United States, it's China, it's Russia, and Europe does not present one of those globally relevant poles in international politics. So my I would say wish, and I hope that it's not only wish, is to try to help European Union to articulate itself as relevant, credible, and autonomous player in that on that global chess table, let's say.
Thank you, Bozo. Voda, was that a hand or no? Then Michelle, go ahead and take us through to the next question. Thank you, Philippe, for your contribution.
Yes, the next question is from Aman. He writes, further enlargement of the EU will present a diversity and a size that will make the veto necessary and thereby change EU fundamentally. A EU of the big ones, maybe a German EU. Do we want that?
Voda Bege, do we want a German EU? Regge, go ahead and start.
Yes.
Am I asked?
No, I'm sorry. I gave the word to Regge.
The issue is that what we need is going away from unanimity. So there needs to be a majority. Therefore, it will not be the big countries that will have the power. But that's saying veto is also having the small powers to veto. I don't see how, because when you are in the EU, the whole point is that each country has their saying in the parliament by having their groups, each member state having a number of persons elected, but from each different parties. And the council is one country have a say. So I don't really see how it could be the German controlling us. That could be if we were to have like huge referendum by the people, but we are not there. It is actually securing the minorities. That is the whole point by the EU system.
Thank you very much, Regge. Voda Bege has raised his hand. Go ahead.
Well, I think that Angela Merkel already answered that question. As Chancellor, she always said, I don't want a German Europe, but a European Germany. And when Helmut Kohl created the monetary union and left the German mark when we created the European Central Bank and not the Deutsche Bundesbank, for example, that are all elements to stress that we are into a European Germany, and that is very important for Europe and for Germany. I imagine, I remember in 2010, 2011, when the euro was at stake. Then they said when we left the euro, we left Europe, and it was Angela Merkel who did not, and it was against her Minister of Finance at that moment, Schäuble, who had not left Greece from the euro, and that was a political statement that she did right at the moment. So I think that the answer is quite clear for me. It is of our importance. It's it's important for us, for Germany, and for the European Union to have a German Europe, not European to have a European Germany and not a German Europe. And that is one of the historical lessons that we have learned in the past, and that we have to remember for the future.
Thank you very much, Voda. We don't have a lot of time left, and we have a lot of questions, so I think we'll let Michelle jump us onto the next one.
Yes, the next question is from Kai Mortensen. He writes, do you think we can engage in any enlargement without major internal institutional adjustments, including a revision of the treaty?
Thank you so much, Kai, for your contribution. Who wants to go ahead and start?
I can.
Go ahead, Voda.
Well, I think that we need institutional reforms and that we have to prepare them. That is what we did in the past. That was what I said in the beginning. We did it in the 90s. We did it 10 years after the Lisbon Treaty was an example of that. The other treaty in 2007. The Maastricht Treaty, the Lisbon treaties, they were all examples of that. That to have an enlargement, we have to prepare it with institutional reforms, and these institutional reforms are at the institutional level sensu stricto. I mean, for a lot of competences, it doesn't work any longer with unanimity. We saw it at the last European summit with Orban. He left the room because he didn't want to use he was forced to leave the room because otherwise he had to use his veto on the support package for Ukraine, for example. But that's a good example to say that we have to work on another way, and that is concerning the our way of negotiating and make decisions, but also on the other level, when there is a new budget that we have to negotiate, that will be of an enormous importance when we look towards the ambitions on the defense level, for example, but also what is going on the agricultural level, for example. When new members like Ukraine are becoming member, then we have to prepare. And so, yes, we need a lot of institutional internal reforms.
Thank you very much, Voda. Reggie, go ahead.
Just shortly, I would say that we should just be careful not to put up a lot of boundaries for new countries to enter. because to say that we need huge institutional reforms, that would take ages, and we are not agreeing on what is necessary. Like the left in the European Parliament has just expressed their wish to have lots of more social clarity, like security, before we can have new countries. And I know the right side of the parliament would something else. They don't want new green things on the agenda. So let's just be careful here. I see some institutional changes being necessary, but not necessarily for the enlargement purpose. The council needs more openness. We don't need the anonymity anymore, but just be careful to wish for too much, because then it would take too much time. And I really think some of the new member countries need us to act and not just get away with a lot of institutional discussion.
Thank you very much, Rikke. Go ahead, Michelle, and take us through to the next question.
Yes, the next question is from Alex Anders Messen. He writes, the EU is often criticized for being slow and bureaucratic in its decision-making process. Considering the proposed enlargement of the EU, where more countries are to be admitted, isn't there a risk that this would lead to an even more paralyzed EU?
Thank you very much, Michelle. Rikke first and then Bozo. Go ahead, Rikke.
I don't see a paralyzed EU. I see a right wing trying to stop what is needed according to the green agenda, but I don't see a paralyzed EU.
Thank you, Rikke. Bozo, do you share in that?
Yeah. I don't think that potential new member countries will contribute to further to paralyze European Union institutions. I think that current constitutional order is the main cause of all kinds of paralyses we are witnessing. But I agree that way of decision making in EU institutions should be changed. I know that my government position is different. Croatian government is against the implementation of majority the voting in the European Council. And I understand it's not only Croatia. Almost all small countries are afraid of so-called German Europe. But I think that if European values are much more present in the daily lives of all European EU member states citizens' lives, if those values are present in daily lives, if those values are mentioned or seriously treated in local campaigns, in campaigns for national parliaments, then we must not be afraid of majority voting. And at the end, in my opinion, EU will become a credible subject of international relations when the only decision-making bodies inside EU are European Parliament and European Commission, and possibly President of European Union. Without European Presidency, European Council, etc. I know that it sounds as a fantasy, but if that fantasy is not fulfilled, then we will, in future, we will we can only fantasize about possible serious role of European Union in international relations.
Thank you very much, Bozo. We have Small 9 minutes left and a few more questions to get through. Michelle, go ahead. The word is yours.
Fatma, are you still there?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Michelle, now we can hear you. I was gonna
All
start
right.
taking over, but I'm
I
glad you're back.
Okay, I think there might be some issues, but let's just continue with the next question I have. It is from Henning Bo Messen. He writes, regarding the EU enlargement, let's not forget the economic perspective, market expansion. Mistake to make EU mainly about security politics. All countries expect a big export benefits. Rich countries, industry will get bigger, workforce, cheap labor, etc. What are the views on these issues?
Thank you very much, Michelle. Reggie, you can go ahead and start.
Yeah, I don't think we can get out of the security issues, but I agree that we have to deal with market issues and economic issues. What I would like to say in this regard, what is for a green, in a green perspective, I have to say that what we really benefit from and needs to benefit more from in the future is the EU being not just securing more trade. It is securing workers' rights, securing environmental rights, and as an economic system that looks at the planetary boundaries. And far too long we have accepted exploitation of workers, and that should really be a huge opportunity, having new countries where we should be careful not to dump the wages, but make sure that everybody gets benefits out of the European market. And I think we could all benefit from that because the countries are there. Why not work with them and make sure we all get richer, but not in the economic sense, get richer in a more sustainable society sense.
Thank you, Reggie. Go ahead, Michelle, and take us through to the next question.
Yes, the next question is from Vlado from Bosnia-Herzegovina. Would it be acceptable or feasible that Western Balkan countries partially join the EU, only in terms of free market, but without features of full membership?
Bozo, I saw your face light up at that question, so you can go ahead and start, sir.
Yeah, then negotiations are not necessary to be taken. There are different free trade associations around the world, and unfortunately, TTIP free trade associations was not concluded. But as others already have said, EU is not only about free trade. I think that EU can welcome readiness of Bosnia and Herzegovina to participate in free trade agreement. But to be a member of European Union must not mean only free trade. It must mean way of life. It must mean accepting of certain values regarding political system, for instance, which means democracy, whatever it means, which means human rights, etc., 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 and in a way, ability to transcend your ethnic or national group interests as ultimate border of your interest.
Thank you, Bozo. Voda, do you have anything to add to that question? Is it possible for new member states to only become partially members or members with different apprehensions?
I don't think that it would be, excuse me, that it would be productive to start to seriously think about those different arrangements. Okay, if certain state is interested in free trade, it's positive. It means that they accept general rules of free trade, World Trade Organizations, etc. But do we want Europe to become content of our daily politics, of our local elections, of our national elections? That's the point. There is no necessity for any country to want to become EU member state. There is no necessity. Is free will of their people. Okay, in certain countries there are different approaches. Not all of them are ready to accept everything what comes with the EU membership. But then they can make arrangement between their country and European Union as a whole, and not to become partial member of EU. I would not be ready to accept that way of reasoning.
Thank you very much, Bozo. Now we only have a little less than a minute, so I will give you three the good side of 15 seconds to do an impossible task, which is to round us off in this debate. Rege, anything you want to say? Then the floor is yours. Then we will go to Voda Bege and we will finish off with Bozo. Go ahead, Rege.
I think it's difficult to conclude on this. Just saying, yeah, safeguarding democracy, Copenhagen criteria, but not let people down. We have made some promises, and be careful not to make too much of promises, because we should really be honest here. But work together on this. It's a task we need to go through together. So watch out for the very nationalistic approaches. Stick to what we aim for here, which is a democratic, strong European Union.
Thank you, Rege. Voda, go ahead. Your 15 seconds starts now.
Well, Europe is in crisis, and I hope that discussions like this one will contribute to overcoming of those crises. And I hope that having all those positive and negative experiences, we, and when I say we, I mean EU, will be more able, more ready to overcome present crisis.
Thank you, Bozo. Voda Bege, do you want to finish this off?
Yeah, thank you. I think that we are now in a third periods of the European Union, the first period from the 50s to the 90s was the economic union, the free movement of people and so on. In the 90s, we get the second period, what was creating a monetary union. And those two periods were endogenous periods for the European Union. Now we are in a third period, and that is a period of a geopolitical union in a new world order. And that is a union where we need to look to the exogenous issues that is coming to the European Union. And we have to make Europe ready for this new third period. And that is what, and also the discussions about enlargement and deepening are at stake in this third period.
Thank you very much, sir. That'll be the last word for this debate. Thank you so much to our three politicians. Thank you for all of you great participants for great questions. Thank you to Senate from Europahaus Rückwälder and the whole team at Croatia for being with us today. That's it. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next one. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.